Today's tip of the week is giving your tenants proper notice. Now, the reason we want to go over this giving your tenants proper notice is because we've just in the last couple of weeks, we've had a few instances where tenants have kind of thrown a wrench into the sale of some rental properties. So the first thing I'm going to do talk about proper notice is the difference between a fixed term lease and periodic tenancy, which is sort of a month-to-month lease. So a fixed term lease is just like it says, it's for a fixed term. So a 6-month lease or a 12-month lease or 24-month lease. If you have your tenants on a fixed term lease, what you want to do is either renew that lease at the end of it, or when the lease is over, the tenants have to go. So it's fixed term. It's for that 12 months. When it's over, the tenants are done. They got to go. You don't technically have to give them written notice, but what we suggest in that situation is to give them a courtesy notice. So, a month before their lease is up, you say, look, your lease is up at the end of December and, we're not renewing it, so you have to vacate the property. Now, the other type of lease, the periodic tenancy, is month to month. So if you've got a 12-month lease and at the end of that 12 months, you just sort of let your tenants stay, your terms of that lease stay in place, but it's periodic now. So they're month to month. They really only have to pay you month to month. And what the Residential Tenancies Act says is they need to give you 60 days notice. But what most tenants do is they give you 30 days notice. So when your lease lapses into a periodic tenancy, you really want to avoid that and have it a fixed term. Even if it's for only 3 months, you want to keep your tenants, put them in a 3-month lease. What we had come up, I'll go over the story of a forest lawn tenant. We had investor selling her forest lawn rental property. She had a property management company, and we suggested that, if you want to sell it without the tenant in it, you have to give the tenant 90 days notice. She wanted to sell it right away, so we asked the property manager to give them the tenant 90 days notice anyways. Well, in the meantime, the buyers wanted to re-sign this tenant. So there was some sort of miscommunication, and the property management company terminated that 90 days notice and just let the tenant deal with the new owner who was going to take possession in 90 days. That turned out to be a mistake because the tenant ended up not signing with the new owner, and we had to redo the 90 days notice right near possession. So it really put a wrench into the possession. The new owner was ticked off. The old owner was ticked off, and the tenant was kind of a problem tenant anyways, and she didn't like any of it. So that's why we're talking about giving proper notice. The property management company should have stuck with that 90 days notice in the first place. That way the tenant would have been out, possession would have gone smoothly, and the new investor could sign any tenant that he wanted. Another thing that you want to do is when you're giving this 90 days notice, it has to be in writing. Some people accept texts, some people accept emails. What we prefer is that you write it on a piece of paper and hand it to the tenant. You go knock on their door and you say you're coming over, hand them their 90 days notice or whatever notice you're giving them. Send them an email as well and send them a text. So you have everything in writing, multiple ways of writing, but beware when you do go to that property to hand out the notice that you're most likely going to be recorded. Azad and I had to come up with a tenant just a couple of weeks ago. We went to talk to the tenant and find out her motives, whether she was staying or leaving. And she right away started to give us all kinds of grief because she didn't want to leave, and the landlord wanted to charge her a lot more rent, but she was fully within her rights to have the tenant leave. What the tenant did is her daughter was in the background with a phone recording everything that they said. And so we were fortunate enough to hold our tongues. We didn't use any profanity. We weren't angry at the tenant. But be aware that when you go talk to your tenants, you are most likely going to be recorded, especially if it's in an eviction situation or you want to terminate the lease. Just be aware what you say, stay respectful, and just assume you're going to be recorded every time. I also mentioned that it will hold up to sales. So just be aware of the differences between a fixed term lease and a periodic lease. Again, we'll go over it. Fixed term lease is for a fixed term, 12 months or whatever. When it ends, the tenant has to go unless you sign a new one. Periodic tenancy, month to month, you need to give the tenant 90 days notice. So if you're looking to sell or you want to sign a new tenant, make sure you give that full 90 days notice in writing so that the tenant will be out when you get a new tenant in there or when you go to sell the property. So that's our real estate tip of the week.